In today's socially connected and fast-paced world, you will want to succeed and stand out from the competition. Your host, Jonathan Butler, is an award-winning chef, restaurateur and author, and is known for shaking up the everyday within our highly competitive industry. Welcome to the Disruptive Restaurateur podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Disruptive Restaurateur podcast. I'm Jonathan Butler, and today I'm talking to Tom Calligham, who has the Out of the Frying Pan podcast. How are we doing, Tom? All right?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you today, John. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate that.
No, it's always great to have interesting guests with interesting stories and everything else, sort of, as we sort of go through what we're currently going through in terms of the lockdown, but also just general as we sort of move through the interesting world of hospitality, isn't it? So,
yeah, of course.
Yes, Tom, sort of give us, tell us a bit about your background and, sort of where we sort of, obviously today's a bit more about sort of mental health and stuff like that, sort of something that's quite close to your heart, but sort of tell us a bit about your background first.
So I started in the catering industry at 16 I was just a KP / trainee chef. Started that. Worked my way up through those years to head chef, but I was with a company, a corporate company, so it was all very quick to get you up to that position. So it was very much a buy-in, ping and sling kind of thing. So I got that at 19, and then went into fresh environment. And since then, I've since working with fresh, that's sort of led me to where I've got to now, which is working in nursing homes, so a lot more down to dietary and nutrition needs, and more of how food can be beneficial to the body. Yeah. But along those ways, there's been some ups and downs with the industry. I've had my own business, which was a catering industry, but it went up and down. So there was work, but I had a lot of competition with agencies. Yeah. So I kind of stuck to the nursing home side of things and more into that kind of catering side. Yeah.
Setting up your own business is never an easy task, is it? Certainly in the hospitality sector, and I think a lot of people sometimes don't realise the sort of mountains you've got to climb, sort of get that done. So, yeah. Okay. So what sort of brought you about sort of getting to, sort of, obviously you've created this podcast Out of the Frying Pan. What sort of brought you to sort of want to do that and talk a lot more about mental health and within the industry?
That was brought from my own experience. I had depression probably from about 14 onwards, and being in an industry like being a chef, it's a very, very stressful and high pressure environment. And probably around about the age of 18, I had a really bad mental breakdown. And I tried to commit suicide. And there wasn't a lot of help offered when I'd gone into hospital. So I was just said, oh, here's a number for the Samaritans. Give them a call when things get difficult and talk to them. And that's kind of all there was. And that was 10 years ago. When it happened again for a second time, my circumstances were a lot different. I'd just recently become a dad. And the help that was there was more of kind of counselling. I just felt that there wasn't a lot offered to me within support. And it made me stop to think within the industry, what's out there for chefs or people in the catering industry, that when things get tough and difficult, who is there that they can turn to? I mean, for myself, it was very much, I felt very embarrassed to talk about my mental health and very ashamed to reach out for help because it would make me look weak and, incapable of wanting to being able to do my job. So it made me take a long hard look at myself to be able to go, what would I want to support me? And so then I've tailored my podcast to being a mental health advocate, but also to focus on people in the catering industry, to share my own experience with these people, to know that I've been there and they're not alone. So without being somebody for them to pick up the phone and talk to, but maybe listening to the experience from another chef can be very, very similar to those. And that's what's brought me about to want to do this, is that there's not much support for chefs, and I never found it. Not from the NHS or those kind of people, but more within the industry, so within businesses. And it's kind of reaching out to those that all that they've ever given you is a support number or a helpline, a crisis line, and that's as far as it's ever got in this industry. And I think I'm wanting to bring to attention to people that it's okay to feel this way. You're not alone, but more have somebody that they can relate to. So that's how I've come about to doing this podcast.
Okay. So what do you think sort of are the main sort of factors that are sort of leading, obviously, because like I say, it's quite apparent within the industry that there is a lot of mental health problems, mental health issues with a lot of, whether it be certainly from the chefs, sort of the kitchen brigade, or even, I suppose, how much is it within the front of house sort of sections as well? I'm not sure. What do you think brings about, why is it so prevalent within our industry? What are the factors?
I think as well, a lot of them is going to be the time spent working, the hours, and the timing of trade can be quite difficult for people. A lot of late nights and so evening and weekend work. It's the bread and butter of the industry, but it can be very, it can take its toll on people. Having no social life, you're just constantly on the go. For myself, it was 15-hour days, 6 days a week, spending my day off sleeping, not having any social life, not wanting to be able to see anybody or do anything. So it just became this repetition of a pattern of get up, go to work, come home, go to sleep. And it was just that 6 days a week. It's one of the big factors is there's no work-life balance for some people. They're just there to work. And sometimes, my experience, managers just see you as cannon fodder, and they just want to get as much out of you as possible because it's getting more revenue in for them. And I think that can be a big factor towards breakdowns and health issues, not just mental health, but physical body health issues as well. Lack of energy because there's no sleep. You're not switching off. You're not being able to recharge your batteries. You're just not being able to process the day to be able to refresh and start again.
Yeah, and you're right. And like I say, I know. Obviously, I've been a business owner, so I've employed, chefs. I've employed, front of house staff. I've been in that sort of management position, and I've been also on the front line as training, and I started like you as a KP, and then sort of worked my way up through a kitchen. So, what do you think, though? Obviously, is it? What really can you do though to change something that has been there for so long? What is it? Education? Is it do we need because a lot of companies would say, well, adjusting the hours, changing the hours, obviously, like I say, that becomes very difficult, doesn't it? So how do you is it a solvable problem, or is it something that we've got to live with but almost try and maintain, sort of manage, what?
I think definitely there needs to be a different approach towards it. Of course, you want to be able to have the best team that you possibly can, and you want them to be consistent. I 100% get that. But when if you continuously overwork somebody and not give them that regular break, so to speak, to that rest period, eventually they're not going to function properly, which could then have adverse effect on the business and affect staff morale. It can affect team morale. So I think there's a 50-50 part on it, on both parts, from management side to whereas the chef side or front of house member side, that there should be very much an open door policy of being able to say, I've got an issue, I want to talk to you confidentially about it. And sometimes you do have to be flexible, but it has to be on both sides. It can't be one person. That's the one thing I would stress in any situation like that. It's got to be a 50-50 and a mutual agreement of, perhaps if it's too much, help with delegating responsibility better, ensuring that there's shift patterns that allow consistent days off, and it's just making little adjustments, little tweaks every now and then till you can get a right balance. That for me was a difficult thing, because I was afraid of going to my manager and saying, I'm really struggling, can you help me? Because I thought he's just going to turn around and say, well, if you don't like it, there's the door. I think there can be that fear sometimes within the industry of approaching your manager, your line manager, to say, hey, I'm struggling. And that can be difficult. But yeah, there needs to be, it has to be a plan of action. You know, you can't just go in like a bull in a china shop and go, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And it has to be, and everyone has to do it, because not everybody is able to do it. So you have to be able to tailor and structure it around the individual, but it has to be a 50-50. It has to be mutual. And that, it's not an easy thing, of course. When you start changing things, there's going to be the pros and cons to it. But being able to, and from my experience as a head chef, where I've had this with chefs, you know, sometimes you've got to learn to be approachable, and sometimes I wasn't. I had to learn to be calm, and I had to learn to read people's body language, and I had to learn to know when somebody wasn't feeling right. And you've got to be able to go, what can I do to help you? But yeah, it's a delicate situation, a delicate subject, not situation, when it talks about people's mental well-being or mental health, because again, people can feel shamed. People can feel that they don't want to talk about it. But sometimes you don't have to approach mental health. You can approach maybe it from a different way, i.e. it being the circumstances that you're in, and just showing that compassion to somebody. It is a good way of starting as well. So regular praise, and also being rewarding the hard work can be a good way of making little changes. So that, in my brain, that's how that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
you know, it's a difficult subject to approach, to talk about, or in any way to find some, as we said, there's a stigma around it. So it's something that I know, especially for me, a younger generation, talking about mental health is becoming more common and more aware. Whereas, say, somebody like the chef who trained me, who's now retired, it's very much that wasn't the thing. You know, the kitchens that he was brought up in and trained in, you didn't talk about those things. You either did it or you didn't do it. Yeah. And that was the mentality.
Yeah, and that's the type of kitchen I was trained in. You see, so I was trained in that sort of, you know, training in the sort of 90s. That it was very much, you know, this is how we do things. You get on with it. You know, you turn up for work, you do your shift, and away you go. You know, and it was low paid, and it was, you know, you were never appreciated, and you didn't get any of that. You know what? And I trained in some very good places, and you know, but it was like I say, it was very, very tough, and I think, you know, from obviously when I work with clients and sort of, you know, these sort of things come up, you know, one of the things I've sort of have probably noted and you know, sort of interested to get your opinion on this is, you know, you talk about obviously almost the fear of going to talk to a manager or whatever it might be, you know, or say you're your head chef or whatever, you know, those sort of people at the, you know, that you're going to approach first. Is it that in the first instance it's got to be brought out into the open, and you know, these people need to have that training, that understanding that, you know, they need to be able to be there and be able to listen, you know, and then they might not be able to want to deal with it themselves, but then at least they've then got the support, you know. So if you're working for a big company, obviously they need to put those support places in place. But if you're just an independent restaurant and you go to the owner, even, they just need to have that ability to say, well, okay, it's not something I can deal with, but I'm prepared to get the support in. Do you think that's the first sort of area that we've got to start with?
Yeah, definitely. As I say, working for a big company that I have done before, they would have like a helpline in place. So I think it was done by Legal and General, one of these helplines, 24/7, and you're able to contact them about any matter. But I think when you're a head chef or a manager, sometimes you are a bit of you're an agony aunt, you're a psychologist, you're a counsellor, you're a bit of everything. But sometimes managers can feel underqualified trying to help somebody as well, and there can be that other side of the coin. I've most certainly experienced that when speaking to younger chefs, is that they've come to me with quite a serious problem, and not related to work, but outside of work, that can affect their work. And I'm like, okay, I'm not qualified to deal with this, but okay, what do you want me to do? So it can feel very overwhelming when it happens. But yeah, there needs to be something in place for managers or those that are of a leader role to have some basic training or basic information of knowing how to deal with mental health at work, or when to deal with people that may be having outside issues or outside of work issues or family problems, to be able to they know that person is approachable and compassionate. I think just being able to listen to them and showing them that you care can open the door, and it can be a start to something. But of course, when you don't know how to deal with that, it can feel very overwhelming, because you're not sure, oh, do I say something? Do I not say something? If I say this, could this make the person feel worse or make the situation worse? And those can go through, it went through my mind, and sometimes it still does. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know how to approach this. What would I want said to me? But then again, what's said to me might not work for that person. But yeah, definitely having something in place for managers so they know how they can deal with it confidently, and by giving the right information, than just saying, I think you should go to your doctors, or I think you should call the Samaritans, or a crisis line or something like that, because that could come across as in, well, that's the only help you're getting from me. But yeah, starting off the ball rolling with showing that support of, okay, you've brought this for me, I'll see what I can do with making things easy for you at work within your job role. And then even by asking the person, what support would you like, it's showing that you are genuinely concerned about that person's needs. I think, yeah, starting with something gently like that is good within this industry. And I think it's something that we do need to get out there. We do need to give this industry. Of course, it's not easy for everybody. I understand that. Not everybody can do that. But I think it would make a big difference in the industry.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. Because like I say, I think one of the issues I've sometimes come across, and you might sort of agree with this, but it's is obviously certainly within kitchens. You say people move up the ranks within kitchens, whether from whether it be just sort of KP and sous chef, or commis chef to sous chef to to a head chef role. And they've just moved up through a kitchen. They've not necessarily had the formal training and development of, leadership skills, management skills. And you can find that front of house as well, that somebody, they start off as a waiter, waitress, then become, supervisor, then become restaurant manager, then become, whatever it might be. And they're just moving up the ranks almost without having this formal, sort of training and whatever. They might do an MVQ course here, an MVQ there, but it's almost that, like I say, people management skills, people sort of leadership skills, and not that just sort of, they'll almost just work as they've been brought, like I say, if they've had a head chef before them that was, brash and harsh and, not not really caring, then they're going to sort of have those characteristics, aren't they? So there needs to be almost that kind of training put in place as well, that people need to, leadership roles certainly today are very different to probably what they were sort of 15, 20 years ago, that you've got to now be much more approachable, much more flexible in how you sort of do things. And I think that's where hospitality in particular is sometimes not flexible.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. It's down to, I mean, you can't expect somebody to know all the answers straight away. And as you say, if they're going to follow the example of how they were taught, that's how they're going to be. As I say, like with chefs that I've worked with that are very much military, precision, they're very much shouting, screaming, shouting, swearing at you. I've had pans thrown at me. I've had knives thrown at me.
Yeah, same here.
Because I didn't do something right. And then you're thinking, okay, but then when you do something good, that person still does that. And you can mirror these behaviors, which again, within this industry, it's very much a case of, and this is no disrespect to one of the world's greatest chefs, in my opinion, people like Mark Apio White and Gordon Ramsay, what they've seen as TV and how they present. Kitchens are not always like that.
No,
they can be, but that's not what it is every day. And it's sometimes that can give a whole different perspective on a kitchen.
But even Gordon Ramsay's sort of admitted that he doesn't want to be known as that type of person. He said that persona is it is almost that, isn't it? It's a bravado, it's a persona. It's like you say, you talk. There's a very kitchen's been a very masculine sort of place, and a very like say you either keep up and you're strong. And clearly, I understand. Obviously, as having run restaurants and stuff. Yes, it's very, very difficult on a Saturday night when you've got 100 odd covers in your restaurant and people are, expecting food to be delivered to them in, 15, 20 minutes, and you've got all these orders coming in. And if one member of the team isn't, keeping up, it puts pressure on the whole team. And then, you start to, and that I understand that, it is a very hot, humid, sweaty, noisy environment sometimes, obviously, and it can be very demanding. And I suppose that, that is the thing, it's that pressure, that stress of, you've got paying customers and they demand, perfection almost. And I understand that side of it, but like you say, there's now got to be this almost conversation, discussion that things have got to change, and they've got to change for the better, because like you say, longer term, even if you just look as a micro environment, business would suffer, like you said before. If you've got a chef who's underperforming, or any member of staff that isn't performing well, they're costing you money, but they could also be costing your business money, on a wider scale. It's not just about what you're paying them. It could be, all sorts of, there could be many, and almost a domino effect of what can happen, can't it? So you need to, sort of address that. And if I think that's something that's quite key, but if so on a wider sort of level, again, it's going to cost the industry in the long run that, people aren't going to want to come and work in this industry.
Yeah. It's a shame when there's this stigma around it, and there's how people can be put off because that is what people are hearing, and it's an industry at this moment in time, it is struggling massively because of this pandemic, but there are those people out there that are fighting to keep it going as best they can. And even now, more so, what I've been noticing is that people are being more aware of people in the industry as well. These people have got lives, they've got families to provide for, they've got bills to pay like everybody else. It's becoming, it's one of the think it's something like 170 billion or a 70 billion pound industry. It's or it might even be more than that. But
it represents about sort of 5-6% of gross, GDP for the UK. The hospitality industry is huge. Yeah.
So these people, they do such an amazing job, and they put every effort into what they do on a daily basis, and it shouldn't take until something drastic to happen for them to be appreciated or recognized. And I think that's the one problem with a lot of things, not just in this industry, but in other industries as well, that it has to take something drastic to happen before people just start taking notice. But for years it's always been there, but only is it now that something's being done about it. And then that can be seen in other things as well. And that people can get the blinkers on and then sidetracked from things, and then it becomes I can't really describe it, but it becomes more apparent when something bad happens. That's the point on that, and it shouldn't get to that.
No. Yeah.
And
Okay. So how, when you sort of you got you yourself have had, as you sort of said, breakdowns and stuff, and how do you just sort of overcome those? What is there particular things that you did yourself that you now sort of continue to do to sort of help you with those sort of situations?
Yeah, the first thing I did, which was one of the hardest, but I'm glad I did it, was that I recognised that I needed help. So I knew there was an issue, and I needed help to find what it was. And so whether it was it the job, was it something outside of work, or was it a combination of everything? So asking for help and digging deep to find that was the first thing I did. And I went to it by going to my doctor, and then by getting the professional help through where I am at the moment, a charity called iTalk. So just by going through CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, which is talk therapy. So that was what I started doing.
Okay, and then is there so if your first point of call, you would say to anybody who feels that they need, they've got to obviously first of all recognise that they need that help.
Well, from my experience, is definitely don't feel pressured by anybody. You've got to make the decision yourself to know that you need help. Mm-hmm. It took me a good 2 to 3 years before I genuinely needed some help. Right. That I felt that I needed help, even though people were saying it around me. I had to take it upon myself to go, right, something's not right, and I need to find help. So the advice that I would give to people from my experience is make the journey, see it like a journey. Mm-hmm. You've got, your destination, that it's going to have some difficulties along the way, but you ultimately are in control of asking for help. But you've got to know when to do that. And if it gets to a point where you're feeling suicidal and really low, don't do it before it's too late. I know that's, very cliche in saying, as in people, I have felt that people wouldn't care whether I was here or not. And sometimes the pros and cons, the cons can weigh out the pros. But if there's one little thing in your life that helps you to keep going, and mine is my daughter, is that I couldn't bear thinking about her growing up without me because of how I felt. And then I thought to myself, well, what can I do if she felt that way? I'd want her to know that I understand that. And that kind of made me stop and think, is that there must be loads of people out there that felt the way that I did. And that's where I wanted to go, as a man, there is a stigma around men being stiff upper lip. You don't talk about your feelings. It makes you weak. That's not true. It's not true at all. Asking for help is a sign of maturity, not a sign of weakness. And sometimes our brain and our mind just not stops. It just can't process it that way anymore. So we have to find a different way to process it. And it's just about self-development. And the advice I would say to people is that just even talk to a close friend and say, I'm having a crap day, and just talk. That could be the first thing, just by saying to somebody, I'm having a really crap day. Can we go for a beer? Can we go and have a chat? Can we have a catch up? And just little things like that, just to start the ball rolling in a way. That's what I did. So find something that's comfortable, that helps you bring the whatever it may be that you have, bring it to light, but it's on your terms. It's on your grounds, so that you're still in control of it. Nobody's telling you that you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. So sorry, I rambled on about that. No.
It's no. I think it's like you say, it's trying to get that understanding across to people, isn't it? That they can, like I say, don't be afraid to ask for help. But like I say, you've got to be in that position, first to be able to, ask for that help, don't you? And it's getting to that stage, and it's then overcoming all those barriers. And I think people sometimes, like I say, I think once they try, once they actually do that, they'll probably realise that a lot of those barriers weren't in place anyway. And they can sort of start to get through it. What obviously, so that was kind of your first thing. What would you say has helped you the most? Sort of over the last sort of years that you've kind of been working through this.
I think is keeping a really good support network. I think for me it was very difficult to realise. When I realised I needed the help, I looked at the problem areas, so to speak. So I looked at the people that I was socialising with and hanging around with. Were they a good influence or a bad influence? Were they supportive of me wanting to become a better version of myself? And, again, a difficult thing to do. But again, it was on my terms. I didn't just turn around and say to somebody, that's it, I'm no longer want to be your friend because you're a bad influence. It just gradually stopped the socializing with them or being involved in things that they did. The industry itself, still people have around, drugs and alcohol. And, alcohol was a big thing for me then. I always enjoyed a good couple of drinks after work. But that became one of the bad habits. So I had to stop that. And I reduced it and reduced it and reduced it. And I did that over time. And that's something I've continued to do, is being careful who I socialize with, because how they can influence in what they say or do. So,
but it's being conscious, like you say, but it's having that, I suppose, making that conscious effort, isn't it? It's like, like you say, we all like to, obviously, let's say you've had a, 14, 15 hour day. And it's like, I just want to sit down, like I say, have a beer and relax and bit of banter or whatever. And it's almost that, stress relief, isn't it? But like I say, if you're doing that every night, week in, week out, it becomes, like I say, this sort of almost forced habit that, or a habit that, like I say, it's not a good habit, and it's not, and we all know, certain effects. And, I always say to people, a great book to read is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, because it talks about the effects of sleep and lack of sleep. And I think that's it's a big factor, because like I say, if you're not finishing work till 11 p.m. midnight or whatever, then you're having a couple of bits, then you go and getting home, eating at silly times or not eating properly or whatever it might be, you almost you'll struggle then to sleep properly and get all that sleep and everything else. So there's a lot of factors that can be, you might think you're getting a decent night's sleep, but actually you're not, because you've got alcohol in your system or whatever it might be, or you've not eaten properly, your digestive system's not working properly, and all those sort of other factors that we don't always necessarily think about can be a big influence. So so I think it's important that people, say rather than do that every night, think, okay, well, I'll only do it once a week, or you like say you slowly reduce it. It might be, well, I'll do it a couple of nights a week, but then I do it. You want to get down to that stage. So actually, no, I only do it, on a Friday night or a Saturday night or whatever it might be. And then you'd almost look forward to it as well, wouldn't you? Then you think, actually, that it becomes these little goals of I can get to Saturday night without having a drink, but then I can have my drink on a Saturday night, and then obviously controlling the amount you drink is obviously quite important as well. So it's kind of almost that sort of working towards these sort of little goals, right? Is kind of the way I'd sort of look at it. I think obviously quite evident from what we've sort of spoken about is, employers need to kind of start to think about ways that they can be more supportive and work through. And I'm a big advocate of we should be working less hours. That work-life balance has got to become more and more now that you have to be able to offer that as an employer. So I think that's something that the industry needs to start to think about. How can we, make, the hospitality industry better, and be more proactive in offering that work-life balance opportunity, because there you can do it, and I know, I do know of some businesses that are working towards that they will only allow their chefs to work X amount of hours a week, and you can't work over that, and you have your set shift patterns, you have your set days off, because that was always a factor, always a difficulty, isn't it, when it's like, oh well, next week what, am I working? It's quite easy, isn't it, to sort of say, well look, we can set days off. Appreciate sometimes you might want to move those around, but if on the whole you've got your set working pattern, it's a lot easier. Or you run a rolling working pattern or whatever it might be, so you could have a 4-week rolling rota, which is what I've done with some of my clients, is that they've looked at it and gone, well look, we just create a 4-week rolling rota, so all your chefs, all your kitchen team is moving through this rolling rota week, and then every so often they get a full weekend off, and you just work it. And it is a very workable model. It's just changing that attitude of actually, no, we can do this in a different way. So I think that to me is something that I think could be really, useful. I was like I say, the other thing I just got from you there was obviously people have got to, be prepared to, work at it and almost, change their attitude towards it.
Yeah. I think you're saying about with people, with the industry, they need to put something into place for a better work-life balance. I think the one thing I wanted to put in that I had an idea was for some industries, like we have Samaritans, you have a crisis line or a call line. There should be something within the catering industry, maybe perhaps from chefs that have been in the industry a long time, that have experienced this, that know how to deal with this, can perhaps give that kind of advice that's obviously not on a medical level, but something on a very practical level, that perhaps maybe internally, kind of like an internal company, like an internal crisis team, an internal well-being team, that could just give practical advice, as in try this or try that. They could kind of maybe just do a few sessions with the person and just see how that goes with the person, just kind of like a taster. That's kind of something that I think would be a good thing to implement in, that, if businesses did that, they go, well, like we have this as a benefit for you because you work for us, and we want you to be well in every aspect. So if you do find things difficult, we have this internal team that are available on this number or this email address. Go to them with your situation. If you don't feel comfortable to come to me, it's all done confidentially, and they're there to support you, and it's tailored for you. So something that's within the company, it might come to a cost to the company, but in the long term, it could actually be beneficial and prevent a high staff turnover.
Yeah, yeah. So in fact, actually, in the long term, it might not cost the company anything, because obviously, like I say, it gets paid. Is that the kind of, say, obviously you've created the Out of the Frying Pan podcast. What is your aim? What do you want to achieve by talking about this? What do you feel would be the big vision? So, if you could achieve anything out of what you're doing,
I think my first season, which I'm still in the process of creating the episodes, is I'm talking to people in the health sector about mental health, as well as other chefs and managers, and from their experience that have been in the industry 20 plus years, and then talking to people about how they would feel. So kind of getting a whole round perspective of people of what they feel the industry should offer to people when it comes to well-being, and then to ask companies out there, and if I can get a chance to speak to CEOs of big companies, to say to them, this is what I've done through my own research. Is this something you would be willing to put into practice for the well-being of your staff? So eventually the long vision is to ask business owners and people that run these big companies to say that you want your staff to do this job. Are you going to put something in place for their well-being, to help them be happy at work, to help them to know that they're appreciated for what they do, for the hours they put in, for the creativity that they give, and the inspiration that they can share to other team members? Do you think that by cultivating that, it's important? So I want to get to people, not just managers, but for the staff as well, for the employees as well as the employers, that as a whole, be more aware of your own situation, your own limitations. And so from the employer's point of view, don't put too much on your employee. Don't expect them to do everything. Of course, their job role will involve a level of skills and things that they need to do. But also from an employee, don't give more than you have to if the employer is going to be unappreciating of it. So it's kind of looking at both points of view, and that, again, to that point of a 50-50 mutual understanding, so that there can be good staff retention, good turnover, profitability, and in the long term, your business is going to thrive longer and better because you're putting that into place. And that's the main vision out of it, is that it works for both. But ultimately, it's down to the fact that the well-being of your employee is important to the business.
So you almost want to create like a white paper sort of blueprint type thing of, this is what, people believe is needed. This is how you could do it. Would you be prepared to put this in place? Yeah.
It's good. I mean, like with Dorset Mind is one of the charities. They have little pamphlets and things that you can download and you can share. There's information there, but I did a course I'm doing a course through Virtual College about how to deal with mental health, not just with your own, but also when it comes to dealing with others.
Yeah.
So I think the course normally costs £40.
Yeah.
Which to some people that's not really a lot of money, but when you put it in a big company to do that course for everybody, of course that's going to be a big amount to spend.
Yeah.
But maybe gradually doing it on a select few, not all at once.
Well, you say it's a big amount of money to spend. It probably isn't really, when you probably think most of their teams have got to go through, most of their employees have got to go through food hygiene training and things like that, and they can be £20-30 a time, but again, these sort of things can be done as, like I say, it's certain levels that we'll probably need. Not everybody's going to need it throughout the business. It's certain levels within the business that needs it, and I think it's so I think the thing is I think businesses need that direction. I think the problem with a lot of businesses is that they won't really know what to do and how to do it. And like you say, so I think your approach of creating that, you know, strategy, blueprint, white paper, whatever you want to call it, this is the, you know, almost how you can implement it, and it can be, you know, we believe successful through the input that you've taken from people within the industry, you know. I think that'd be pretty.
I think that's the main thing, is that, and of course it's not in any way to put anybody down. Nobody's at fault here.
No,
but it's a case of, if you're not aware or know how to deal with it, obviously you're not going to maliciously make these mistakes or maliciously make somebody's life or work life unhappy.
No.
If you're not, you know, all you can do is give somebody the tools.
Yeah.
Only they can be the one to fix it.
Yeah.
You know, it's that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
No.
And that's the case.
Yeah. But it's like you say, when these things sometimes have become apparent, or come to, you know, like you say, in a kitchen, if you've, you know, if a chef goes to somebody and says, oh yeah, I'm not actually too happy about this, that, X, Y, Z, you know, the proper response is, oh, it was only a bit of banter, you know, didn't really mean it, type thing, and everything else. But again, it's how people deal and how these things are taken. So I suppose it's almost like I say, getting that awareness and everything else. Well, you know, I think that's really, really key and really important for this industry to move forward. So yeah. So just sort of wrapping up, you know, what's sort of, obviously, you know, podcast is sort of in the making, and sort of hopefully, you know, sort of we you know, look forward to sort of hearing more about that. You know, what are you kind of wanting to, you know, what's your sort of advice, you know, to if somebody listening to this going, right, I need to get sorted, you know, what's the one bit of advice you're going to say to them?
I would say, don't feel ashamed or afraid to reach out for help. I felt exactly the same. I felt scared and I felt embarrassed, but that was very much down to my own self-pride. But it's not going to make you any less of a person to ask for help. Even if it's talking to a close friend, your partner, or somebody that may not even be in the industry that you want to talk to, it's a start. Reach out to somebody to talk to, but always do it on your grounds. Make sure it's when you feel comfortable. If you feel like you want to do it and then back out, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just ensure that when you talk, you're not alone in any way, shape or form. You're not alone. And that first hurdle, once you're over it, it does become easier over time. So don't think that it's impossible, because it's a challenge, but it's not impossible.
Okay, brilliant. That's superb. And if so, people can check out of the Frying Pan podcast.
Yeah, it's on Spotify. It's on Anchor FM. I think it's on TuneIn Radio. But mainly I think it's on Apple Play as well. And so it's on a couple of streaming lines at the moment.
Excellent. Okay. And any other way that people can contact you if you know? Yeah,
so you can contact me.
That's if you want people Instagram. To contact you.
Honestly, people can get, contact me, and if they want to share their story, they want to ask questions, I'm more than happy to talk and share my own experience. That's the one thing I'm kind of proud of this, to kind of go, I was at first doing this, say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I could never imagine myself doing it. Yeah. But now I almost feel happy to go, I know how you're feeling. Talk to me. I know how these feelings are. So there's Instagram.
Yeah. What's your Instagram?
Again, it's Out of the Frying Pan.
Out of the Frying Pan.
You can DM me on that one. And I've got Facebook as well. Contact me on Facebook.
Okay.
And I've got LinkedIn and Twitter as well. Just search for my name, or through one of those ones. That would be
brilliant. Okay.
More than happy to talk to people.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks very much. It's been really, really interesting. All right.
Brilliant.